Welcome to another episode of the Courageous Journey podcast. I talk with Lauren, an Akashic reader, healer, and shadow worker. She shares how her journey began and how she sees people's energy fields, noticing whether they feel heavy or full of light. We also discuss energy attachments, how they can affect us, and Lauren's work in helping people clear and balance their energy. It's a cool conversation about understanding the unseen influences in our lives. I hope you enjoy the episode. Lauren, welcome to the Courageous Journey podcast, and thank you for taking the time to have this conversation. I'm really, really grateful that you took your time and are here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk to you. It's going to be a great conversation.
I believe so too. So let's get started. I really would like to know a little bit more about yourself. And you write in your bio that you're a healer and an Akashic reader, and you say so much more like a shadow worker and the psychic protection. That sounds so magical and so cool, actually. It sounds like a fairy tale. Can you say a little bit more
Thank
about
you.
those things?
Yeah. I love that perspective because I feel like a lot of people will hear that. And I've actually gotten comments before and they're like, shadow worker, you must, work for darkness. And I'm like, no, we are navigating the darkness and the unconscious and the hidden with a lot of love and a lot of compassion and a lot of light. And I think that gets really misunderstood of what a shadow worker is. But again, I think our definitions of all of these terms are very misunderstood, and it kind of is different depending on the person, right? It's really hard to explain the unseen realms and the spiritual side to things with the limited vocabulary that we do have. But yeah, I found the Akashic records first. So I actually counted back the years. I think it was 2 or 3 days ago, and it's been 8 years since I've been reading the Akashic, which is a little mind-blowing to think about because it was yesterday to me, when
Wow.
this whole journey started. But it was 2017 or 2018, and I was living in LA because I got sick. So I guess we'll kind of start there because I mean, you could trace back the psychic abilities and all of that to childhood, right? As soon as you kind of wake up to it, you're like, okay, the signs were always there. And I grew up in a small town outside of New York City. Like from my front lawn, you could see the New York City skyline. So it was right there. So I was in the tri-state area in that New York energy. My parents both in finance. They've been at the same jobs for 30 years
Oh,
of, companies that are well known. And then you have a very emotional and moody and sensitive child. And it was just, yeah, a mess, honestly, my childhood. But then I started to develop symptoms that kind of left me bedridden for about 10 months back in 2015, 2016. And it was due to, negative energy, like negative thoughts about myself, self-hatred. I had an eating disorder that I was battling from a very young age. And so, doctors couldn't figure it out. It was energetic. I realized it was, these energies that were within me that were not innately my own, but that were, yeah, contributing to this negative cycle that I was in, right? Like we'll get into it a little bit later in the episode, but the entity attachments and the psychological warfare, and, it all makes sense now, but it did not make sense then. And so I heard the voice of spirit, not for the first time. I traced the first time actually back to my memory. I was like 8, 9 years old in church. And I was learning that if you, think bad thoughts, Jesus will be upset with you. And I didn't know what it was, but I thought about sex And I didn't know, like, I just knew it was bad. And then I was like, oh my God, Jesus hates me. Like, I can't even control my thoughts. And I remember hearing a voice tell me, like, no, you're not in trouble. Don't listen to this. Like, detach yourself from this religion at 8 years old, you know?
Yeah.
So I was forced into the church until 18. And then finally I'm like, Mom, this is traumatic for me. Like, you're forcing me to something I do not believe. But, now I have a very close relationship to Jesus, to the Marys, to Christ, to God. And I realized why I had to be forced. I held the cross every Sunday. Like, that's how deep in the church that I was. And it makes sense now. But anyway, I got sick. I heard the voice of spirit. I moved to LA and I was trying to heal, but the gifts started coming more and more, and then the visions and the clairaudience, and it was very overwhelming. This was now almost a decade ago, so the information wasn't as readily available. Millions of people woke up in 2020. That was not the case, right? Especially when all of this really started for me back in like 2011. So I was very confused. I didn't even put together that I was psychic. It took a long time. And so I started to heal. And then in 2019 is when I was having a flare up, an autoimmune flare up, which is what I thought it was. And I went to this group Akashic reading. And she was like, you're not having a flare up, you have an entity attachment, and you need to learn how to clear these yourself. Your work involves both the light and the dark, and you need to start opening yourself up to that. And I lost it. I cried for probably the whole day, like in public. And I didn't want to hear that. I wanted to stay in the light. I wanted to be using my gifts, in that realm and not be in darkness because I knew I was plagued by it my whole life. And yeah, then the pandemic hit and it really forced me to look deeper. And I just went on this really crazy journey since of descending into the underworld, these looking for these wounded parts of myself and tending to the wounds that my consciousness carries and that my body, excuse me, carries. And yeah, the business just kind of took off and grew from there. And did I ever expect this? No, I was studying herbalism. I wanted to help sick people and use the intuitive abilities. But yeah, Spirit had another plan, and here we are today.
Wow, wow, that's a lot of things and a lot of
Yeah.
questions arrived. So let's get let's get it step by step. So because I have a lot of questions and probably the people who are listening to it have a lot of questions, such like what is an Akashic reading? What is an entity? What is the dark um, the psychic protection, the darkness that you had to go through? How do these things look like? Because if you talk to people on the street and you tell them these things, 8 out of 10 people gonna look at you like you are not okay in your mind. But I mean, we are on the same side, so I understand what you're talking about. I myself have also some questions that I hope you can answer them. But first, let's go step by step.
Yeah.
When we are young, it's good because the spiritual path starts with curiosity, with a lot of curiosity and with a lot of happenings in our life. And the majority of time, the happenings are negative for the moment. So they hurt or we lose something. I had to lose my job that I loved back in the days. I had a very dramatic accident. I had an accident on the motorbike that took
Mm.
me out of my professional career for 2 years, and I fell into depression. But that was in the moment really hard for me. But afterwards, seeing back to it, it was the biggest blessing that could have happened to me. It was like pushing the reset button and everything is on zero. And now you can start your actual path that you're meant to experience and live. And it gave me so much, and I could focus on all these things what I do today, like help people heal in many different ways, and also meet those kind of people. like you from afar, and it's such a blessing. And it's it's full of light, as you said, but also darkness is there and was there. And I had to understand that darkness is not only part, but I have to become friends with darkness in order to be the light that I am today. And that would probably be one of my questions, like how could you explain to people what's the darkness that you lived in your life?
Yeah, it really is true that our darkest moments are our greatest strengths, right? And if we don't go through the experience like times 100, then how are we going to walk someone else through it? And how are we going to be able to support another, right? If we aren't, yeah, like my own journey was, even up to the point that I shared, compared to what I've gone through the last 5 years as I've been navigating the underworld realms. That was nothing compared to, what I experienced. But it's like now when I'm in session with clients, there's nothing that I feel I can't navigate. I can completely protect the client, right? Because when you're in the hidden and when you're in the darkness, right? It's really it's a tricky energy. There's not a lot of light. So souls and beings can kind of get away with a lot more, like we've seen on this planet. So to back up, we live in a galaxy that is dualistic, right? So there's both light and there's shadow, and there's no getting around that, especially here on Earth, right? We're here to experience both. And you've probably seen this, and maybe it's been you in a moment in time, like a lot of us go through, where we only want to stay in love and light and kind of get caught in some of these new age traps. And I understand why it's fear. It's fear that is not allowing you to see beyond that. But you're missing out on knowing like a huge part of yourself if you're choosing not to look at the shadow and the unconscious, right? Because science says the unconscious and subconscious mind, we're operating at about 95% in the unconscious, 5% in the conscious. So you're operating at a very small percentage of consciousness if you're choosing not to open yourself up to it. And it's just the nature of reality on Earth at this time, right? So I'm gonna back it up even a little bit more because right now I've been diving into some ancient scripture, specifically the book of Enoch, and it kind of tells the story of the fallen angels, right? So I don't if anyone has never heard before, it's right, the angels that fell from grace. And it's kind of that was the start of this darkness on the planet. So the story, really long story short, says, the God appointed these angels called the Watchers to oversee humanity. The more time they spent with humanity, the more they started to lust over the women. They were giving them forbidden knowledge, and they started to procreate with the women, producing a group called the Nephilim, who were the giants, and they were quite vicious and very like tortured humanity and gave them all this knowledge, like weapons and war and vanity, and like they even in the book says astrology. And so over time, it was just, yeah, there was a lot of brutality and a lot of darkness. And then God threatens the Great Flood, right? And the Great Flood will happen if the Nephilim do not leave and leave humanity alone. We know the flood happens, and what happened to the Nephilim is that they fragmented. They never actually left the planet, but they fragmented, and those are the entities, the demons that are, all ancient cultures and scriptures and religions talk about, right? Like it's in every culture. So it may, reading this book after years of like understanding these from my own perspective made a lot of sense as to why they're still here. And like we live in a very physical world but there's so much happening energetically that we can't see. And there are other spirits and other beings that live here that are not in human bodies, where it is just as much their home as it is ours. And a lot of people are starting to see them now and communicate with them and kind of wake up to that. And, I communicate with, well, I wouldn't say I communicate with the dark spirits. I see them and I help people figure out why there's an attachment there and help them to liberate themselves from these beings that are, parasitic. They're disconnected from God, they're lost, and they kind of attach to others that are wounded, because it's easy. And they, those that are wounded, and I'll speak for myself, I lacked a lot of self-love, self-worth. I was not in my sovereignty. And so it makes it easier for something, even a person, right? It doesn't even
Yeah.
have to be a being, but a person who can take advantage of you when you're in that state, because we all need life force energy to survive. And these beings, right? They disobeyed God, they turned their back on God, and therefore they don't have that direct connection to that energy that sustains life. So they need to get it from somewhere else, and they get it from the people. And so, we see how our systems have been built, and even, like sports, and sports arenas, and some mass mainstream music concerts, where you kind of start to realize like all this stuff is taking my energy, and hold on, like I'm not even in control necessarily of my own body and my own thoughts. And you realize that it's this energy, this
Yeah.
consciousness that I call, right, like the Antichrist, the opposite of Christ, right? Because if the highest of high points exists, then that means the lowest of low points exist as well. And this Antichrist consciousness, there are so many beings and souls that are feeding it and keeping it alive and kind of doing this work for it take this energy.
To feed it.
Whereas, right, to feed it. And then you have, those like us who are serving God, the other energy, right? And all these different beings that are embodiments to different degrees of God. And I feel like as humans, we're kind of learning both. Like we've got some of this dark energy in us from humanity's history of being taken advantage of, being forced into these very oppressive systems, where now we are very wounded. There's a lot of trauma that we didn't really have an opportunity to work through in the past, if you believe in past lives, because we weren't, there wasn't enough, I believe, like light on this planet for us to be able to see it. So now we're all back here at a very pivotal point in Earth's history, and we're starting to realize as a collective, like, oh, wait a minute, I've been operating out of alignment of my true self, and my true self is love, but there's a lot of energy in me that is not that, and I need to figure out why and work through that and understand my wounding and my patterns. And don't even get me started on the ancestral
Yeah.
stuff, which is a whole other thing. So yeah,
Lauren,
yeah,
can I tackle? Can I say something?
yeah,
So
yes.
thank you for so much for sharing all of this, and you will continue with this. But I just wanted to say that, of course, it's easier for this type of entities to to come in touch with your system when you are on a lower vibration, because you're very vulnerable at that state. And also, you said something about that in past lives or years ago there was not so much light. But I would say this: nowadays we are so advanced technologically, but we aren't advanced spiritually. So back then they had a different connection to source. They had a different connection with their higher self than today. But today we are more connected. We are easier connected through all this social media and the phones. Back then they probably didn't have the phones, but they had a different type of connection because they had more time to go inwards. Now everybody is stressing out if he doesn't have the phone for 1 hour. So, but the good part and what makes me happy is that I see so many people, such as you are one, that growing like plants and I see them everywhere and they doing the work. But first, they have to do the work for them in order to be of service for others. And I think you and every me will help to increase this vibration. And there is also a lot of misunderstandings and misconceptions on that because spirituality starts getting hyped and becomes kind of a trend that it's so cool to be all love and light. And we both know that it's not like this because if you haven't seen darkness, you're not able to express light. If you haven't tamed darkness and your devils, you will not be able to serve the light. You will always be under attack easily. And so this was actually the point that I would like to make. And how do you how do you recognize entities? Like how would you tell someone how they look like if he's very new to that?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because it can be jarring, right, to hear something like that. But it depends on how you perceive it, because you can either choose to be in fear or deny, or it's like you could be like, wow, this might actually liberate me because I've been, I what I try to call in my business with my clients are those that have already been on the spiritual path, who have, it's like they've tried everything and they've been doing the work and they still are in some state of suffering, can't get to the root of this issue. And I know that I can take them there because where they need to go is, a place that it's very hard to get there on your own. So I try to call in those that are ready to hear that or already, have some idea. But a lot of times the client, like deep down, knows, right? They know that there's something wrong. And I think that was one thing, and not wrong with you, but something inside that does not belong, and your soul is trying to tell you, right? And I
Mm.
remember when I was younger, I would always like hear myself saying, like, my brain is broken. Something's wrong with my brain. Something's wrong with my brain. Something's wrong inside. Like, where am I? What is going on? Right. So I knew that I was looking for something. Did I know I was looking for, you know, what it was? No, I didn't know it was going to take me into the underworld, but that's the thing. It's like this is our reality, and it's mirrored to us um, through our systems and through the way the government is set up and how the government treats us, and right through Hollywood. And it's like it's hard to deny that this negativity exists on this planet. And just wanting to say too, with darkness, I always break it down into two types of darkness, because darkness does not equal bad. And also having these attachments and these wounds and like being in this, lower vibration is not bad. I feel like that's another new age thing where it's like, I went through a thing with a good friend who wound up doing a lot of black magic on me, like very, very advanced black magic, where I gained 15 pounds. I lost my period for 3 years. I had rashes all over my body. It was really bad. Um,
How did you
and
overcome that? How did you
yeah.
are you able to speak about that now or is it too long?
Yeah, I can talk about it.
Like
I mean,
briefly if you like, just to give a
yeah.
hint.
Yeah, it was just, it was my initiation, I feel. Well, for one, um, you know, for the 3 years leading up to it, I knew I was descending, right? It was that moment of like, all right, I gotta go. It's time in the spiritual journey. It's been a fun year and a half of love and light, and now I need to descend. And I knew I was battling darkness. And oh, that's what I was gonna say. Like there's There's the sacred dark, right? The void, the cosmic womb, the shadow even is very beautiful. But then there's a side to darkness, and it depends on your intention in the darkness, right? Like we can be in darkness, but still be connected to heart and have good intention and be still operating from a place of service to others. The thing is, our shadow has become so wounded. There's so much deep pain, so many triggers, so much trauma. And then you have the dark beings that are just operating from a place of greed and control and hatred, honestly. And that is a different type of darkness, right? Like there's evil on this planet that you can't deny. I mean, look at the war and all of the children that are missing. It's like you're very disassociated if to say that evil is does not exist on this planet. So there's, kind of when I'm talking about darkness here, I'm talking about the more negative intention when you're in a dark space. And that is, part of my mission here. I've been on Earth for over 500 lifetimes. I come back to back to back to back. It's like I haven't had a break, and I'm on this greater mission, which is, I think it's even bigger than what I understand now. But I'm in this lifetime, at least, I'm here to expose these cults, these very long-standing cults that have been, part of the dark priesthood, doing a lot of ancient magic. Black magic is really just manipulation of energy to serve the self. And that's what our entire world has been created off of, right? Energy going in to create these systems to serve the self. And I see that as a form of black magic because they're manipulating that energy for them, not for all. So I have been trying to separate myself from a cult that was very alive during ancient Egypt. So they're like Thoth Anunnaki cult. I didn't know any of this. I just had a mentor, kind of. She taught me Reiki. We were friends. I lived at her house. I, was really close with her daughter. We did a retreat together, and it wound up, she invited me to her retreat. And the moment I got there, I was like, this is dark. There's darkness all over this property. There were seven like portals to the underworld on the property, and I felt immediately, I'm like, nah, this is this is not right. And
Lauren, sorry,
yeah,
give me an image of this underworld because you mentioned it before too, and I'm curious, like, what does it feel or feel? I can imagine, but
yeah.
what does it look like for you?
Yeah. So I'm pretty visual. I would say like all day, every day, there's visions coming, but within the underworld, it's just a lot of darkness. So, and I can feel myself descending, right? It's like I know when I'm even in client sessions, it's like, okay, we're going into these lower realms because your energy is there and we need to go retrieve it and integrate it and work through it, right? And figure out the why. So I see many different types of I mean, I feel like probably don't want to get into it here, some of the icky things that I see. But the vibration is heavy. It's a little claustrophobic. It's anxiety that I feel. I feel the density, the fear.
All the good
Um,
things,
yeah,
all the
but
good things.
again, all things that we're here to also experience. Like there's no such thing as a negative emotion, like it's all for us. And, you think about some of the other civilizations out there on in other realms where they don't feel emotion like we do. And so kind of always coming back to that as it's a blessing because that's why we're here to feel that and experience that. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Well,
So
uh,
so
what the journey,
Yeah. So just really quickly to finish the
please.
story on the ex-mentor. Yeah, I went on this retreat. Her true self came out. I was kind of starting to sense that she stopped treating me with love around February. and we took a little bit of distance, but she invited me to her retreat in August. So we were already, things were a little bit weird. Um, but I knew that I had to stay on that retreat because okay, so I'm scared. I'm gonna be honest. The first 2 days, I couldn't access my vision. I felt like I had strep throat. My stomach was protruding. I'm like, what is going on? I can't access my Akashic records. I can't see anything. I'm not really getting messages. The only thing I could do was muscle test. So something stepping on that property was blocking my abilities. So we have a moment. There are three of us who are seeing what's going on, and two women at the retreat that were so scared. I didn't tell them what was really going on, these poor girls, but they left. So there were five of us out of, I think, maybe there were five or six more that were, not aware. So we have a moment, we're in Mount Shasta. We have a moment to leave. We go on the mountain, and we take a gram of mushrooms, and we're sitting at the lake. And basically, I see this sword being pulled out of my Akashic, out of my third eye, a huge, like 1,000-pound snake come out of me. And then all the truth comes in. Like, this is a cult. This woman is not who, you believed her to be. You've been trying to escape these people for 16,000 years, and you are about to fully break free from this, but you need to stay on this retreat. And because you keep running, running, running from these people. And I've actually seen so many lifetimes where I've been taken off planet. Like their energy on me was so strong that it's like I would keep dying young and not be able to like continue my lifetime because they were attacking me. And so then I'm tracing back, like I have a brain tumor, my depression, like not all, but so much of my hatred toward myself was them like projecting that to me, and over a long period of time convincing me that I am the bad one and there is something wrong with me. And, it took many months. It's been a year and a half now. I'm so much better. I've almost completely, shed this energy. But it was the greatest initiation of my life. And I'm like, if I can handle that, like any client with anything, darkest of dark cases, like bring it on, because I know that I can help you through this. And it led me to, I was getting attacked up until that point and having to really work on my protection and keeping these, um, parasitic energies out. And now I'm fully protected. There's nothing that can get in anymore, which was a big part of why I needed to stay, because it was giving me my immunity. So I could be face to face with this woman now, and she can be sending me all this negative energy, but nothing will land. And so that has been the greatest gift of all, because I can ease into life. I can start feeling safe in my body again. And, that's the beautiful thing about this work is like, yes, it's hard, but like what you get out of it, like finally being safe, finally feeling liberated, like it's worth every penny that you spend,
Yeah.
every moment that you invest in it to get to this place. And I had I was in ayahuasca about maybe a little over a year after all this happened. And I had this moment with God, and it was like, you have never been able to experience free will, like true free will, and the beauty and the how powerful it is, to make your own choices, like how much of a gift free will is, because your free will has always been tied to this group and these karmas. And so, like, it was just a very profound moment for me of like, wow, I
The,
have this liberation and
you
this
broke
freedom.
the
And
cycle.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Wow, it's and so powerful actually. The the moment we realize and we face those things, as I mentioned before, that to be able to be here today and to do what you do, you needed to go through these things. And they may be uncomfortable, may be painful, and they may be disturbing, but they are so worth it. And now you're able to say, that's why I can serve you guys. And it's not that because people tell me healer, 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 but it's not that I heal them. I don't heal them. I'm just a vessel that helps and supports them. The healing is not coming from me, it's coming from something greater than me. And that's so
Yeah.
beautiful. That is so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I say the same thing. I'm like, I'm a guide and I move a lot of energy, but it's your I'm at the mercy of your soul, right? I can't remove anything. I can't do anything for you that you are not ready for
Exactly.
yourself. And I walk with you and I co-create with you. I'm not doing it for you. And I've definitely had many conversations with clients about that where I'm like, there is, a lesson you need to learn here and something you need to work through, and I
Yeah.
can support you, but we can't move past this until that's done. So, it's like I was saying in the beginning, it's like these definitions that we have, right? It's like, oh, you're a healer, and it's like, no, that's the term we're using, but it's
Yes.
not actually, it's so much bigger than that. So,
It's thank you so much, Lauren.
yeah, yeah.
So you said Akashic records, Akashic reading. So I don't have a lot of experience with that. Akashic, what I know about Akashic is there were some monks somewhere in Tibet or Himalayas, I'm not sure, and they wrote out of trance lives of people. Is that correct?
I would say it goes back so much farther.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Can you say it
So,
with simple language what Akashic reading is and where
yeah.
does it come from?
Yeah, I mean, so it means primordial substance, Akasha, when translated in Sanskrit. So okay, I'll give my understanding of it, right? And it kind of goes back to what's happening on this planet and the ancient scripture and how we don't really know the truth of our reality, right? We're blocked from that truth, and we're all trying to sift through, and how we unblock ourselves from knowing our truth is a very internal process, right? The shadow work. So our ancient texts have been manipulated. Our history has been manipulated. Even like, psychic readers, right? Intuitive readers, they're not really connecting necessarily to these higher spiritual planes. They're pulling information from the astral realm, which there's a lot of distortion that's still there. So where do we access this information that is not distorted, that has not been interfered with in some way? And the Akashic is the closest thing to that, because it is a field of information that is in a much higher dimension than what most souls here at this time do have access to today. It doesn't mean that you will never be able to access the Akashic. I think we all can have this ability, but it takes work, right? And this level of soul initiation to get there.
Mhm,
So it's a protected field of information that exists in a realm of light that is protected by these keepers and these lords of the records, as they're called. So not everyone has access to it, because if your intention isn't, if you don't have good intention for why you're accessing this information, they're going to see that, what even if you're like saying that you are.
yeah.
That's why a lot of Akashic readers, they're not actually in the Akashic realm. They're saying a prayer, they think they are, but they're not. And that's why you have to really be careful with anyone that you're working with, and making sure that they are really of integrity, not just saying that they are, but their energy also speaks to that. So in the Akashic, and this is my little spiel that I give people that, had never heard of it before, you think about how intelligent the universe is. Humans are not using that intelligence to the degree that we can. But the universe is very intelligent, and it would make sense that every experience that our soul has through all of our lifetimes is recorded and stored somewhere. Like it wouldn't make sense that that information would be lost, right? That we'd never be able to access like who we are and who we've been. So that's the Akashic to me. It's an opportunity to know yourself, um, outside of your earthly vessel, outside of just this lifetime. Like, who am I? What is the wisdom that my soul carries? Why do I, these recurring patterns and these cycles and these traumas, like, why am I experiencing them? What has led to this moment? Um, like, yeah, just so many things. And it was the first, my very beginning of this work was the Akashic, because I was just like, why am I this way? Why am I so unhappy? Why am I sick? And it was the Akashic that led me to everything else. I would, open it and get the next steps and the next steps and understand more and more and more about who I am. And it's been such a beautiful tool.
So, why should somebody ask for an Akashic reading?
Yeah, I think if you, so one, I'll say what I won't do. Those predictive questions, right? Of when am I going to meet my person and things like that. Like, the predictive questions are more what I do is I show you like the top three different timelines of how things can play out, right? Because it's always changing, and there are certain things that are more fated, and then other things that are more up to free will. So I look at the possibilities, tell you what it will look like, and then you make that decision of the timeline that you find best for you in that moment. But I would say, if you're struggling in relationship dynamics right now, like hard time with mom, hard time with partner, like the why, what are these soul contracts that you have with these people? What are the past lives? Why are you in this predicament right now? What are you meant to learn from it? How do you handle this situation moving forward? If you have health issues, right, getting to the root of long or short standing health issues, why this is happening. You want to explore past lifetimes. You want to understand, who you've been, where you've been, what you've been learning, and the evolution that's taken place over, these many lifetimes here on Earth. It's just like the why behind who you are and the way you are. And it's really beautiful. Like, there's nothing that will ever be shared that is not going to be in your highest good, right? There's nothing that will ever invoke fear. Even the hardest things that are shared with so much love and so much compassion. And yeah, it's nothing's off the table. It's like I always say, like, those questions that you have about yourself and your life that you always wondered, it's a perfect time to ask.
It's I, I can imagine it's really funny with your relationships because you aren't you a you react to famous people like you can see their soul, right? Like you
I see everything on everyone. And
beautiful.
I
Wait there.
don't I just want
So
to say too
please,
that
please.
I don't like tune into people though.
Mm.
Like, I have a veil over me because being human is really important to me, and to see it all the time also is kind of an invasion of privacy, right? So I'm not going around looking for everyone's distortions. But
So so you do
yeah.
that only on when you are interested in people, I guess.
Well, I receive the messages about these famous people, right? Because what's happening in the realm of pop culture is a direct mirror to all of it. So when I'm seeing the moves, like the chess moves, right, that they're making with these famous people, it's telling me what their plan is. Because I'm part of, yeah, I do this work, right? But I'm part of something so much bigger, and it involves exposing this darkness. So by observing what's going on and being tuned in to pop culture, I'm seeing, like, they're telling me what they're doing so I can catch it and get in front of it and do the energy work and the grid work that I need to do. So, like, when I'm talking about Elon Musk, and I know it's a lot of Kardashians too, I'm like, there's another reel coming soon with Kim. And I'm like, why am I so obsessed with Kim? I'm not obsessed with Kim. It's just, yeah, it's like these messages that I'm receiving. So I'm not even digging for it. They come in daily life, they come in my dreams, they come in, medicine journeys, and I'm guided to share it because, it's they're programming our subconscious, and they're
Yeah.
feeding off and siphoning our energy, and people are starting to feel it and starting to see it. And so Yeah, I feel like maybe I'm obviously a big trigger to a lot of people that are still defending celebrities, which is really, very hard for me to have compassion for because I'm like, this person does not care about you at all. But yeah, so I do talk a lot about what I'm seeing in celebrities, what consciousness groups they're connected to, what their intention is, and yeah, quite vocal about that.
Yeah. Yeah, you must have a hard time sometimes with people who are still cheering them up because you can see the truth behind. And I guess it's kind of intriguing to see people cheering something bad, and that is not supporting the good of themselves and the good um, the group, the good of the how is it called, group, the good of the
Yeah,
collective,
yeah,
the
yeah.
good of the collective, exactly.
Yeah, I mean it to me it's not like, and I have friends too, right? I just posted a reel about Tony Robbins and how not for
I
me.
saw it.
But I have some friends that go, right, to these things. And I feel like, I really try to practice non-judgment where I'm like, you want to, I still love you. You're in that world, fine, where we can have different beliefs. But my problem isn't so much with people that are still defending it. It's the rude comments, the mean comments, the negativity, the projection, like trying to belittle me and tear me down. Like that's the problem that I have, not your actual belief itself, you
Hmm.
know?
But I mean, Lauren, isn't it obvious that what people don't understand, they will always try to fight?
Yeah.
Isn't that obvious?
Totally. I think
Right?
yeah, like I mean, I'm getting, negative comments regularly. The other day it was all just scrolling. There were like 50 comments. I'm like, "Oh my gosh." But I'm getting better at it. I'm getting better at not paying attention to it. Because my role is to expose and to trigger, but I do it I really try to do it with so much love in my heart, and there are people that are not going to see that, but I feel like there are a lot that do. And I'm not trying to hurt anyone. I'm not trying to, cause any problems or any tension. It's just like we need to see this and we
Yeah.
can't move forward. We can't heal as a collective if we continue to ignore the truth. And so, yeah, it's just my contract in this life.
Yeah, and the reactions of people, it's inevitable. So either good or bad, it's not of our control. And of course, when your intentions are good and people don't accept them or can't understand them at that particular moment of time, it's not their time yet, and that's also fine. And I see that also many times with people I coach, or with people who come to me and ask questions, and you see they want, but they are not ready to receive yet, and that's also okay. I am in that state where I let them go. I let them continue till they are ready. And a lesson that is good for someone doesn't mean that it's good for everyone right now. And I remember, or I can tell, my one of my favorite persons in the world, Jesus, was crucified for speaking out his truth. And we can see that people do that. And sometimes they don't even know what they do. I mean, mistakes are not made out of always not knowing what I do. They are also made out of egoic decisions, and that's also okay. But I'm in a state where I can understand. Compassion is a big thing, of course, and a thing that we have to work on. But it's always great to see it from a bigger picture, and not just, from the small perspective of being a human.
Yeah, and that's what I say too. I'm like, look, my reality is being shattered right now too. Like the deeper you go down the rabbit hole, and there are certain truths that are coming to light that have been a tough pill to swallow that I haven't even been vocal about yet, right? So if you think I'm already out there, like there's more, right? And the deception runs so deep. But I always say, I'm like, if you're not ready, do not dig because you have to be prepared and it's just like, yeah, if you're if you believe something different, like I accept that. I am not judging that. But eventually you're gonna get there and you're gonna see it. And yeah, we'll all get there in our own time.
Yeah, and don't forget, we are kind of in a spiritual war
Oh, for
that
sure.
there are so many false prophets or healers that you made once a video where you talk about healers that engage more and healers that engage less because they use certain I don't remember how you called it, but of course. And I believe that there is no room for fighting against those people. I believe there is more room of becoming the light we are and speaking the truth. So this allows people to engage more instead of going one on one against those people, you know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And you are doing also something in Egypt in October, or when is it?
Yeah, I'm figuring that out now. But it
Hmm.
will likely be November, December. So yeah, I host retreats. I took some time off last year, 2024. Um, and yeah, we're gonna meet in Egypt at the end of the year. I think there might be one more maybe in the summer. I really would like everyone to gather in Mount Shasta again. But yeah, I went to Egypt last year. I knew it was to prepare for a retreat because my retreats are not just let's all get together and we're doing huge mission work, huge grid work.
What
Um,
is that?
yeah, so okay, so there's uh, a grid on this planet, right? That I call the Unity Consciousness Grid. That is this technology, this light that connects us to each other and to higher planes, higher dimensions, to everything. And when without that grid, we are cut off from the rest of life. So these dark forces that I keep talking about, right, that are in our government and our leaders, the elites, have kind of created their own grid that connects us to the darker, the shadow that actually cuts off our connection to God. And so there's kind of that's part of the battle, right? This war on consciousness. It's like there's right with the wars in the Middle East, it's all on the Holy Land. You know how much wisdom and energy is stored in the grid and in the vortexes there, right? Where like that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to destroy our this knowledge that we're all trying to keep safe and protect. So there are all these vortexes and portals and ley lines all over the planet. So part of my work is dismantling the dark grid and repairing the organic grid. And the reason I know how to do that, and this is what I've been, shown, and it resonates, through the Akashic and my own inner exploration, is like I help to create these grids. So it is my responsibility to be here to maintain them, to make sure that we are yeah, able to continue to stay connected with one another. So obviously there's been, a darkness in Egypt, right? With the new kingdom, when the pharaohs started to reign, when after ancient Egypt and a lot of right? The slave labor and the siphoning of energy. And I definitely experienced that when I was there. So we're here to help bring in more light for keeping it really, really simple. Obviously, we're going to go to the temples, we're going to receive, we're going to connect with, all of the beautiful beings and ascended masters that are there and have our own experience. But we're coming together as a group to do work for the land and restore balance to the land. So I don't know exactly what it looks like until during and after.
Hmm.
Like when we were in Mount Shasta, I didn't know exactly what we were doing until the very end. And it actually was after everyone left. And what we were doing was clearing like Atlantean trauma, like war trauma, and all these people that have come to Mount Shasta to use her energy for negative reasons and like have harmed, right, the life force. And so we were clearing all of that. And it took me about 8 hours. I sat there and I was just, and every single person on that retreat, their soul, right? They weren't there anymore, but their spirit was with me as we were unearthing all this dark energy from the mountain, which is the heart chakra, or not the heart chakra. I want to say the root
The root.
chakra. Yeah. Which was really important, right? And so, yeah.
But Lauren, what can people expect when they come there? Will they do some sort of exercises, yoga, breath work, pranayama, I don't know, meditations? What will be the process
Yeah.
to make it a little bit more
Yeah,
visible?
we'll be priests and priestessing. So maybe, a little bit of yoga, but it's mostly going to be the visitation to these temples and dropping into, meditations there. I have my sound bowls that will be, have private access to certain temples, and I have a very strong connection to these beings. Like I have them, I don't know if you could see, but like tattooed. I have Isis, I have um
Interesting.
Hathor. So, I've been developing a relationship with a lot of these ascended masters, Jesus included, the Marys, and yeah. So we're gonna, open this container, invite them in and like be in their presence, like really in their energy. And it's the same thing that happened in Mount Shasta. Like I created this energetic container over us, and Kuan Yin imprinted into it. All the Marys, the Isis, Hathor, they were with us. Like it felt like they were physically there almost, right? Like it was really powerful. So they'll be walking with us as we journey. So yeah, lots of time spent, more so, yeah, in the temples than, some retreats. It's like we're on our own. We're, especially when we were in Tulum, it's like the ocean and the yoga and the ecstatic dance, and a little bit less of that and more
Yeah.
pilgrimaging.
Why should people come?
Yeah. So yeah, I feel like you will know that it's like you signed a contract with me to be there before this lifetime. So if you don't feel that you're meant to be there, then it's not for you. But even like in my other retreats too, I'm like, oh, we all agreed to meet here. We all agreed to do this together. And I think a lot of clients too, they've been feeling the call to Egypt. But I think that, and they want to do it in a way that is safe. I went with just one other girl, and I would never, ever recommend that. I would never recommend a woman to go alone, even two, because it was just, yeah, it's not that we weren't safe, but it was hard. It was hard to navigate. And so, yeah, we'll have, security, we'll have a
Yeah.
guide, we'll have each other, and
It
to
will be a safe
receive
space, right?
safe space, to be a part of something so much bigger and to experience Egypt and be able to really connect with the teachers and the energy that's still so alive in these temples, really
Yeah.
to receive like a huge activation that will take place.
I just can imagine. I mean, I haven't been to Egypt in this lifetime, but something is calling me also there. So, yeah, let's see when this gonna happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, Lauren, it really was a pleasure, and I'm very, very grateful that you took the time again and shared this knowledge and experiences that you had.
yeah. Thank you for giving me this space. I know these, topics are not always easy to talk about. And I think just, as a final message, it's just like remembering it just is, right? Like this is what we're here to, this is why we're here. And that when you are in the shadow work, or if you feel like you're beginning it, just knowing that you're safe. and guided by God and guided by your higher self that has been preparing for this moment, right? Of really facing this. And so just continuing to develop your relationship with yourself, your relationship with God, with the elements, right? I always tell my students it's all about relationships. It's not just when you need something that you connect to these energies. It's a constant exchange of love between you and them always, right? Like life becomes a ceremony and becomes a ritual. And I'm here to hopefully help continue to provide information that yeah, that's important to hear on the journey. I don't have guests yet. I'm preparing for that, but a podcast where I do talk about, yeah, my like the dark side to things and the shadow and the different beings and like who they are and how they manifested and how they operate and what how to begin the shadow work. Like there's so much content there for anyone who's like, I don't even know where to begin, but I want to learn more. So yeah, and you can find me laurenonearth.com and Lauren on Earth on Instagram.
Great. I will also tag you in this with your social media. So
Thank you.
thank you again and much, much love.
You too.